Thank you so much, Rabbi Miriam. This is such a treat to be reconnecting in this profound communal space. And also, much, much gratitude, Harry, for your tech support. And much gratitude to each of you for carving out this time to connect with your own heart and to connect with each other and with all of us in this way. It's really an act of going against the stream to choose to pause, settle to the extent that that's possible, and return this process of tshuva that meditation invites us into. So, as Rabbi Miriam said, I'm Alison Cohen or Allie, either works, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And today I'm joining in from Washington, D.C., from the lands of the Piscataway and Nacotchtank peoples. And it's just such a gift to be here. And so I thought we could begin before I move into a brief teaching with just another moment of arriving together in an embodied way. As some of you have heard me say before, mindfulness is really a misnomer. It's bodyfulness, it's embodied loving awareness, it's embodied mindful awareness. It's this recognition that the body is a sacred portal through all of these sense doors for awakening to a more aligned life. And so, if you'd like to, and this is a simple technique that's often taught in elementary school classrooms as a way of supporting students' nervous systems in regulating a bit more and in experiencing greater ease, we can just take the next few moments to engage in some heart belly breathing. So, resting a hand on the heart, if that feels comfortable to you, and a hand on the belly, or you might just do one. And if you'd like to, closing the eyes or softening your gaze and letting your hands receive this tender body and the subtle sensations of the body breathing itself. Nothing to do or make happen, nothing to strive for. Just this process of arriving. The gentleness of heart belly breathing. And so we'll take the next few moments in quiet, receiving each inhale and each exhale, honoring the body's wisdom. And feel free to keep your hands there or continue to rest your gaze or close your eyes. I'm just going to move into a period of, I wouldn't even say teaching necessarily, but an offering. Um, so, yesterday here at the IJS Daily Sit, Yiska Smith offered, and some of you may have been here for it, a gorgeous teaching that connected rabbinic commentators across time and space. And then near the end, she shared this wisdom. Through spiritual practices, I begin to become within me my own shepherd. In a sense, it was a blessing for all of us. May I begin to become within me my own shepherd. This blessing, this loving care, this hope that each of us develops the capacity to grow in this way, in the direction of mind, body, heart, soul alignment, a kind of self-led, loving leadership. And what I really appreciated about Yiska's teaching and about her delivery of it is that her blessing didn't have this kind of widespread 21st century undertone of you're not enough, or you're not good enough, or you're not aligned enough. And therefore, from this place of deficiency, you need to be engaging in spiritual practices. Instead, what I took away from it was there is room and space, spaciousness for growth as human beings. And may we bring curiosity and kindness and maybe even joy to that endeavor. And simultaneously, so at the same time, each of us is B'Tselem Elohim, fashioned in the image of the divine source and held in rachamim, held in boundless compassion. So right now, this is especially relevant because we're in the 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av. And in addition to this period being associated with mourning, it's also meant to be a time of introspection, a time, and I'll bring this word in again, a time of tshuva, meaning a time of return, a time of realignment, a choice to gently and courageously hold up a mirror to our actions and speech patterns and inquire, to what extent are they in alignment with our conscious values and the yearnings of the heart? So Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook, who lived from 1865 to 1935, he writes about tshuva in this way, as coming from, quote, great love and clear understanding. The return, the process of realignment, as coming from great love and clear understanding. And there are many, many different ways to interpret great love, capital G, capital L. For those of us who are more humanist in orientation, it may be that there's this sense of a loving communal push to live with greater integrity, like what we're doing right here at the Daily Sit, that this communal support bolsters us via the sacred power of meaningful human connection and community. Or for those of us who have tapped into the embodied experience of loving awareness via meditation or via prayer practice or life itself, we might understand great love to be loving awareness or compassionate awareness. And it could also be that certain Hebrew words or concepts feel most resonant, the language of Shekhinah or Havaya or Ein Sof, or just the word mystery or God. Or, and this is a very Jewish perspective on great love, who knows? And great love goes hand in hand with clear understanding, because it becomes much easier to see ourselves clearly and perhaps make some changes, some adjustments in our lives when the lenses through which we see ourselves are loving and kind and tender and acutely aware of just how hard it is to be human. So, to go back to Yiska's teaching, which emphasized the power of spiritual practices, through spiritual practice, we can cultivate the capacity to remember more and more frequently our connection or the embrace of this great love and clear understanding that allows us to self-compassionately recognize areas for growth, areas for change, without needing it to involve berating or questioning our worthiness or humanity. So, in a sense, if I were to put it in the form of an inquiry question, from a place of great love and clear understanding, what steps can I take to return or make tshuva so that I align in a more consistent way with my heart, values, purpose, with the oneness that was, is, and will be? And in my own life, I used to find it much harder, for example, to receive constructive feedback. And this was actually mainly because I would find myself quickly questioning my own goodness and worthiness. And as I began engaging in spiritual practice, especially heartfulness practices, great love practices, Shekhinah practices, I found that one of the strange and unexpected effects was receiving feedback became so much easier. Recently, my brother followed up with me about a conversation we'd had, and he said, "Allie, I'd really appreciate in the future if you didn't give me unsolicited advice. The advice you gave me, that was inappropriate." And I noticed an internal sting. And then there was this sense of being held in a great love that honors the messiness of being human and the messiness of relationships. And I said, "My dear brother, I'm sorry. I apologize. I won't do that in the future." And he simply said, we were messaging back and forth, and he wrote back, "Thanks for hearing me, Allie," with a little heart emoji. And then he just continued the conversation. And we went on to a different topic. And I bring this up because I realize I could receive this because there was this sense of being held in something so boundless that regardless of how much I had missed the mark, I could access a clear understanding that he was right, that he cared enough about our relationship to tell me rather than let it fester, and that I could respond accordingly and we could move on. Great love does not abandon us, and it can support us in not abandoning ourselves, especially when we're engaging in the courageous work of tshuva. So today, this is what we're going to be doing. We're actually just going to focus on strengthening our connection to a source of great love that will engender clear, humble, courageous understanding and clear seeing or discernment that can buoy us as we deepen into introspection during these spiritually potent 3 weeks. As we make that transition to meditation, you might just notice how your posture feels, whether you'd like to make some adjustments to it. We'll be practicing together for the next 10-ish or so minutes. And if at any point during this practice something arises that feels beyond your window of tolerance or beyond your range of resilience, just knowing that you can self-compassionately tend to yourself in whatever way feels right, opening the eyes if they're closed, sensing your feet on the ground, pausing the meditation to take a sip of water or give yourself a hug. And that's not being a bad meditator. It's just cultivating the ability to attune to this great love in every moment and tending to ourselves with care. So you might close your eyes or soften your gaze, turning inward in whatever way feels right. Just welcoming yourself and each of us to this fresh moment in time. Maybe, as we did earlier, resting a hand on the heart or belly or both. Honoring that meditation is an act of care, of love, of compassion, that's inherent in the choice each of us is making. And you might gently scan your body from the top of your head all the way down to the soles of your feet, noting where this moment's body is connecting to a surface behind you or beneath you, to the floor, to the earth. Nothing to let go of, nothing to change, just a letting be. Resting in awareness as this interconnected body, heart, mind, soul meets each moment. Just this, right here, right now. The beautiful messiness of being human. And you might bring to mind and heart a being or force that cares deeply about you. A being or force that, in a sense, represents a great love. And this might be a person, family member, a teacher, a friend, whether they continue to walk this earth or have already passed on. It might be an animal companion, or it could be a sense of divinity, or nature itself. Or for some of us, we really feel into and can receive the great love that comes from feeling held in kahila, in community. So it might be that you choose to rest in the experience of being here, part of this web, a web of like-hearted practitioners. So taking a moment to just choose a being or force. Doesn't need to be a perfect relationship, but where there's a flow of love and care. And you might imagine that you're being held through this being or force in great love. A great love that wishes you well-being, peace, ease, and the ability to see things clearly, including and especially when we inevitably miss the mark. A great love that loves us regardless, that continues to accompany us in this courageous journey of human life. So, in a moment, we'll move into practicing together in quiet for the next few minutes. And just know that it may be that no feelings in particular arise, or there's a sense of warmth or an embodied experience of spaciousness. There's nothing you're expected to feel, nothing to search for. Just this practice of strengthening our relationship to a source of great love. So that becomes over time more and more our default. Let's practice together. Sensing what's here now in body, mind, and heart. And if you'd like to, you might extend a blessing to each of us and all of us. May you remember that you are held in great love. May you remember more and more frequently. And may this great love go hand in hand with clear understanding. Thank you so much for your practice. And at your own time and in your own pace, opening your eyes or shifting your gaze, beginning to wiggle fingers and toes. Toda.
Toda rabba, Ali. Thank you for beautiful practice and teaching. Friends, let's turn to Kaddish Yatom, to Mourner's Kaddish. Please share names, if you'd like, of loved ones you're thinking of today, remembering today. If there are specific people you're holding close to your heart, or if you're thinking of people whose names you may not know, but you know have died far away, around the corner, and want to bring their memories, their presence into our community today. And invite you to rise in body or in spirit if you're reciting Kaddish, and feel free to unmute so we can be in these words of blessing and uplifting together. Itgada
Ikadash
Shmeraba,
Amatira
sanctified and sanctified be the great name of God in the world created according to the divine will.
Amen.
God's sovereignty to be established a lifetime in that of the entire house of Israel. Amen. May God's great name be praised all eternity. Be honored, extolled, exalted, adored, and acclaimed. O blessed Holy One, glory is above all the praises and adoration human beings can utter. Amen. With praise, please, will the whole house of Israel be accepted by the universal parent of us all. Amen. May God grant abundant joy to us and to all Israel. Amen. May God ordain harmony in the universe, grant peace to us and to all Israel. Amen.
Amen. Amen. May their memories be a source of blessing to each of you, and may all those who are in mourning be held in love and care. Amen. If anyone has a question for Ali, please write in bold question as you type your question in the chat so it's easy for us to see. Let's see where our exploration continues to unfold. Maybe as people are writing, I'll start. Observation. So Rana writes, it occurs to me that before I can ask forgiveness for any real and imagined trespasses, that I must forgive myself. Shame and regret only serve to isolate us, and we miss the many opportunities to love and be loved. In the end, we are all doing the best we can. Such an important piece about shame, which you addressed, Ali, but I wonder if there's more that you want to say about that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're bringing in shame and Rana. Thanks, Rana. For me, and you actually address this in part in your observation in naming isolation. What's been most helpful in understanding shame is the pretty recent research on shame by Brene Brown on the three components of shame that are all deeply interconnected. And she often uses the image of a petri dish, and that shame grows when there are three components being added to the petri dish: silence, secrecy, and judgment. And that when something has taken place in our lives, or we've behaved in a certain way, or something has happened to us, and there's this sense of, oh, this has to be kept a secret, and I must be in silence around it. And also there's self-judgment layering on. Then that's the perfect storm for this universal human experience of shame to arrive. And so then the question becomes, well, how do we navigate that before we end up in a shame spiral? And generally, the invitation is to cut through one of those tendencies. So to, for example, share what you're beginning to experience shame about with a dear friend or a therapist or a rabbi, or to even just say it aloud in the woods and have it received by nature and see what happens, like the process of Hitbodedut, which can be a powerful process for cutting through shame. This process of speaking things aloud to the great mystery and asking for support and guidance. And I'll say in my own life that research on shame has helped me not to isolate, and to cultivate the kinds of relationships where we can be messily human together. And so in my own case, I've learned if I start to see these arisings of, oh, Allie, that thing that you just did, it needs to be kept a secret, and often there's some distorted perception in there, like the mind is amplifying it. I have one or two friends who are my go-to buddies where I call and I say, I'm feeling really vulnerable. Can I tell you? Can we talk through this together? Can you help me clean this up if there's anything that needs to be cleaned up so that I can realign?
Beautiful. This question, you covered some of the elements that this question raises, but there's an additional piece around forgiveness. So this is Linda's question. I find it easier to show compassion toward others around me than to myself. How do I find ways to forgive myself and show more self-compassion?
Beautiful. So what's interesting is that as someone who's a self-compassion nerd and loves the topic of self-compassion, increasingly what's become clear to me, Linda, and anyone else who's also interested in this topic, self-compassion is a misnomer. And it's a very 21st century phrasing because it implies that we need to generate something. We need to do, we need to make compassion towards self happen. And actually, I would say this isn't so Jewish. I think Jewishly, it's more, can I remember and engage in practices that help me remember, whether I realize it or not, whether I currently believe it or not, that actually there's a circle of compassion or a boundless compassion or a limitless compassion that's already holding me, that's already here, that can be rested in and received and relaxed into, rather than kind of a self-generating piece. And so, what this means in terms of practice is one, recognizing that maybe the compassion we quote feel or exhibit towards others isn't ours in the first place. There's compassion flowing through, and we happen to be a vessel for it. And what if this compassion, because it doesn't discriminate, also happens to include us? So just to get really nerdy, the research on self-compassion, again, 3 seems to be the number today, says there are 3 components. And so you can use these 3 components to remember that you too can be included in this limitless compassion more frequently. The first component is mindfulness. It's awareness. Oh, this is a moment of suffering or challenge. Okay, that's the first. This is a moment of suffering or challenge. That's not over-identifying with it. That's awareness. And then this second component, common humanity. Oh, I'm not alone. This is a part of being human. Feeling shame is a part of being human. Suffering in this way is a part of being human. Experiencing challenges around forgiveness is a part of being human. And then the third part, what would it be like to just incline the heart towards receiving kindness and compassion? So may there be greater access to kindness in the midst of this. So what I would say, Linda, is there's a both and. Some of you may have heard the saying on the spiritual path, if something isn't a paradox, it probably isn't true. And this is one of those where simultaneously there's a relaxing back into, there's a resting into, and there's also an intentionality and an active turning towards the practice of remembering, right, I can bring awareness, common humanity, and kindness to this experience. Because just as compassion moves towards me, through me, and touches others, that compassion isn't going to abandon me, even if the mind cleverly convinces me that it is doing that. So I'm going to pause there. I hope that's helpful.
Beautifully said. And I loved the gesture you did for the mind. The mind can be such a severing uh, part of self, so um, focused around taking grip of the ego, separate self, and cutting off from that flowing, constant source that you described so beautifully. Harris asks, is it a matter of remembering so much as opening myself up to the compassion that is around me, not just from the divine, but from all those who love me?
So, what's so beautiful about this question, Harris, is that one of the things we begin to see very clearly on the path is that words matter and that we're meant to get playful and creative with the language that we use, because one word that really resonates with me may or may not land as well, but there's this sense of being able to tap into the essence of what's being communicated and then find our own language that really maps on more closely to our own experience. And so, what's beautiful about this is I think feel free to use opening myself up. For some of us, it does feel on an embodied or heart level like an opening up. For some of us, it may feel more like, oh, yeah, I forgot. Now I'm remembering. And what I appreciate about you naming this, Harris, is you're inviting all of us into or giving us creative permission to, in a very Jewish way, play with words and consider what what helps us really access these concepts in our own way. And there's this classic in the mindfulness world, this classic saying, there's a difference between pointing to the moon and the moon itself. So what words do is they point us in the direction of the moon, and some words do that better than others. And then the moon is the embodied experience that the limits of language cannot touch. And so it can also be powerful to, in just a glimpse of what it's like to include ourselves in the circle of compassion, or the limitless, or the field of compassion, or whatever, the great love, and then notice, oh, a certain word came up for me that gets close enough to mapping onto them.
Beautiful. There was a question asking where else you teach. So Harry put your website, the link to your website on in the chat, but is there anything else you want to share about your teachings and how people can continue to access learning from you?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much for that kind question. So I do send out, I'm not on social media because that isn't good for my spiritual health. So we'll see if that changes, but that's been how it is for a long time. So mainly my email newsletter, which comes out twice a month, and includes some reflections on mindfulness, generally not from a Jewish perspective, actually, because I have a wide-ranging list, but it includes offerings that I'm teaching, and that includes offerings in Jewish spaces, a wide variety of Jewish spaces, and then some under my own auspices, and more, which I feel grateful about, under IJS's auspices. And I also do work with IJS's young adult program, Shevet, and we'll be teaching on the young adult retreat. And also do some in-person work in the DC area in Jewish spaces here. And that also gets communicated through the newsletter, as well as you can just check my website. I include a few classes and retreats there. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Great. And I want to remind folks that our daily sits are recorded and are available on YouTube afterwards. So Ali's taught a number of times with IJS. You can search through and learn with her asynchronously from previous sessions.
Miriam, I'm seeing a really important question for you in the
Yes.
chat.
Yes.
Asking you to just describe the motion you made
Oh,
for people
thank
for
you.
whom, yeah.
Yes. Um, Ali made a gesture of holding one hand up with a finger extended toward her temple and did a bit of a circling in the air. And that was reflective of the mind thinking and fabricating in certain ways a sense of self. Thank you so much for asking me to do that. We have time for one more question, I think. I see a question here about Jewish sources, and I'm curious if you have anything in particular in mind, Ali. Rachel's question, what are some Jewish sources, commentary you would recommend that speak directly to the great love that holds us despite or especially if we miss the mark?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, what comes up for me as someone for whom Yom Kippur is my favorite day of the year, which my family has never understood, but in my own over time, in the reading of the Yom Kippur liturgy and in the use, and this really maps on to contemporary self-compassion research, even though, of course, there are also very complex aspects and perhaps contradictory aspects of the Yom Kippur liturgy. The emphasis on we have this recognition that um, we have missed the mark in various ways, and that there is this boundlessly compassionate source that is present for us regardless. And I think I really am actually so grateful to you for this question, Rachel, because you're helping me make connections. And it's helping me realize that for me, part of my interest in, I'll just use it even though I don't love the terminology, self-compassion or compassion that includes us, um, stems from a sense of feeling a level of wholeness by the end of Yom Kippur, a level of no matter what has unfolded in the past year, I am still held in this great love. And that will continue to be true. And so the first thing that comes up for me is just revisiting the Yom Kippur liturgy, specifically through that lens, and maybe not worrying as much about the parts that don't resonate.
Beautiful. Just in our last minute, I'll lift up, I think it's pronounced Elan, mentions Havarabah, a prayer that comes in every day's liturgy before the Shema that says we are loved by a limitless love. And a similar but different version is mentioned in the evening service as well. So that's a beautiful source. And just a plug for a book by Rabbi Shai Held, called Judaism is About Love. And it is a treasure trove of sources on this topic exactly. So with that, we shall close. Ali, what a gift and a treat to be guided by you, to be in your presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I felt very deeply held in love by your presence, Rabbi Miriam, which was deeply anchoring, because sometimes teaching can bring up all kinds of emotions and visitors. So just much gratitude to you.
And to you. And thank you again, Harry, for your beautiful tech support. And to all of you, may you all have a love-soaked day, continuing to nurture that gift. Thank you, everybody.
Take good care.